Good afternoon, Mr. Amersi. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me. We are here in Beijing for 11th Forum China and Globalization. So, first of all, can you say, please, share your opinion about the challenges that our modern world facing?
Thank you very much, Akmaral. It is a pleasure to be here and to talk to you. I think that we are going through a transformational change in the world order as we have known it since the Second World War. And whenever there is a transition, whenever there is change, there is disruption, and people feel unsettled, people feel nervous, levels of conflicts rise because it is a realignment, a rebalancing. And what we are going to be seeing is that a world that was duopolar, bipolar around the Second World War, then evolved into being unipolar. And whenever you have a unipolar situation where power resides with one institution, one state, then unfortunately, because humans are all pretty selfish, people tend to abuse or misuse that power. So this continues and has continued in a unipolar situation since around the 80s when the Soviet Union collapsed and until today. However, this cannot stay like this forever. Empires, as you know, have a shelf life of 100, 150 years, and after that they evolve, they change. So I think we are living this moment. You and I are living this moment. We are at the cusp of a transformation where we will see, in my view, I would not like to call it a multipolar world like it has been labeled everywhere, where you have the polarity, United States, you have China, you have Russia, and you have other emerging powers. I think polarity will be governed by the strengths of the countries. So, for example, there is no question that the United States will be the sole military superpower. As of now, they have around 700 military bases around the world, and somebody researched that and said that the sum total of Russia, China, EU, and UK is 46. So that is the disparity. So who will displace the United States as the military pole? Nobody. I think then there will be economic polarity, and this one is where China has a huge advantage. Its GDP in the next few years will exceed that of the United States. Its population are slowly going to become middle class consumers. So you can see that it will be an economic powerhouse. The Belt and Road Initiative has done wonders for them because it has been able to help them exploit their economic strength all over the world. And then I believe, as I said in my speech today, that we have not seen much of it yet, but it is slowly evolving, which is a technopolar world, which will be a world where there will be no borders, where people who are on the net will be called netizens, and they will be speaking to each other. So the community of netizens will be huge, and they will have influencers who will influence them, they will have leaders who they will follow, and they could become a state in themselves. And so this is how I think it is going to move forward. And on the technopolarity, at the moment there are two centers of power, United States and China. You have Silicon Valley on one side, you have the AI companies that are coming up in the US, but China, as you know, surprised everyone when they suddenly launched DeepSeek, which overtook most of the AI companies which had invested billions in that. And China was able to do this with a very modest budget. So the competition for technical superiority is going to drive everything going forward. This is my view of how the world will change.
But also you spoke today about soft power.
Sure.
This is the soft power.
So no, soft power is when people like you because they like your culture. They like you because they like the fact that you are standing for human rights, you are promoting democracy, you're allowing freedom of speech, you're allowing demonstrations. But I think that the time for soft power is gone, sadly. There is nobody that is exercising soft power. The United States certainly is not today. The United States is exercising hard power both domestically as well as on the international arena. And I think some say that China is ready to displace and replace the United States in exporting soft power. But I think anybody that looks into soft power has to say, how does a Chinese citizen actually live at home? How free are they? Is there freedom of speech? Is there freedom of movement? Is the political process totally democratic? And sadly, the answer will be no, it's not quite like that. So the only power is not soft power, is economic power that China will be able to export, is the one that we are seeing through Belt and Road and other initiatives like the Asian Development Bank. One should not confuse economic superiority with soft power. Soft power is for the moment more or less dead.
Yes, okay.
In the US, for example, they reduced the budget for US aid. They shut down Voice of America. They have shut down the amount of aid they were going to give to countries in extreme need. They are shutting down museums. They are shutting down anything to do with culture. I was on the board of a think tank called the Wilson Center in the United States. Overnight, they decided to shut it down. Why? Because its political views may not be fully aligned with that of the governing administration. So this is what you are seeing. The World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, they're all institutions of soft power, but sadly they're not going to be supported.
But also, I think in those countries you mentioned who experienced the soft power on themselves, I think they're quite happy that you say it is closed. I mean, the governments, because sometimes soft power was used just to interfere in the internal affairs. Also, besides of course, help to the culture, to tradition, to support minorities, etc., etc. But also it was misused, I would say. For example, to promoting LGBT movement, like everybody knows that it exists. It has right to exist, but you cannot impose it. You cannot promote it aggressively. For example, in the societies which have traditional values. So so maybe that's why the contradiction was huge in this case. And the very powers in some countries, they view it as interference in their own domestic affairs. So sometimes soft power also misused.
Is abused. So yes, you're right. I think that what the West has tried to do is to tell the world that our model of governance, our model of democracy, our model of free markets is the best for everyone. This is liberal market orientation, and it should be adopted by every single country in the world. This is the only model that works. But this is a very short-sighted, very naive view, because there are cultures like India, there are cultures like Iran, cultures like China, civilizations that have been in existence for more than 2,000 years. They know what works for their people, and every attempt to democratize democracy has not really worked. When you look at the Arab Spring, for example, suddenly something that happened in Tunisia was caught by the Obama administration and said, okay, this is now the time where Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria will all become, democracies rather than autocracies. But this failed. It failed in Iraq, it failed in Afghanistan. So the West has to understand that these countries have got their own systems and it's best to leave them as they are. I think finally the penny has dropped and they understand it. So you're right, democracy and freedom is sometimes being used as an excuse to brainwash people in states and get them to either protest or uprise against their systems and their governments. It's been explained to them that under this model they are freer. But when you look at it, people are rarely really free. They are captives of either the state or captives of people that are very wealthy or captives of media companies. They are hostages. Whatever you think of it, it's a question of which oppressing power you replace an existing power by. This is the question.
Yeah, exactly.
There is no such thing as a selfless utopia in the world.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Where, George Orwell in his book Animal Farm, 1984, he understood how humans are, and he predicted how all this would play out, and he was very, very right. They say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I just remember in the connection with our communication, I remembered our coup attempt in Kazakhstan. I mean, in Kazakhstan, when it was also very bloody event, very tragic for us. And I remember, all internet was shut. We didn't know anything, but when I was looking from the windows of my apartment, I saw people fighting on the streets. But before people started to fight, these insurgent groups, weaponized groups, started to shoot at army, to shoot at the ordinary civilians. And then, of course, it was like we were in the beginning of the civil war. Sure. Actually, yes. But in the same time, it was only one TV channel operating, and we could see all the news only by the eyes of Khabar. You worked in Kazakhstan, you have been in Kazakhstan like many times. So in Khabar and Eurovision. So by Eurovision, it was translated the meeting of between Russia and NATO, and I will remember it for forever. Like General Secretary of NATO, Stoltenberg, Jens Stoltenberg.
Jens Stoltenberg, yes.
Yes, he was making a speech and he said, we as a NATO, we will always depend free world. We will always defend free speech and rights of human rights, etc., etc. So for me, was like, what? Why NATO should defend like military organization? If military organization behind soft power, what does it mean?
No, these are all excuses. So as you know,
and at the same time, even before army started to shoot on these insurance groups, militias, many Western media already announced the news that dictator, authoritarian power in Kazakhstan, they're shooting their own people, they're killing their own people. So the same standard as always happens, like the shooting even didn't start yet, yes. But they announced these killings before it started, In the same time, Jens Stoltenberg saying that we are going to defend free world and right of this human rights and free speech. For me, now this is Western soft power associated
with double standards.
With double standards, yes, exactly. So now you are a great negotiator. I know your contribution to peace, to find a solution in any conflict. It's just amazed me since first time we met.
You're too
really.
kind.
Yes. And you're actually spending your time, your money, your nerves, of course, your energy. And what makes you to do that? Please explain.
I have been fortunate, Akmaral, in life where I think I've been able to achieve most of my dreams. Okay, everybody dreams. Some people want to be doctors, engineers, lawyers, investment bankers, even politicians. So I had a dream that by the age of 55 or so, 60 maybe, I would retire from the money-making world. Enough is never enough. You have to know when to draw a line and say, it's enough. At the end of the day, in our custom, they say that when you die, if you are lucky, somebody will come to your funeral. And if you are even more lucky, then they will wrap you up in a coffin or in a white cloth. This cloth, it has no pockets. You cannot take anything with you. So what is it that you must be doing here today is leaving behind an impression. They say that it is easier to die when you have lived, but much more difficult to continue living after you have died. Okay? So I woke up one morning and I said, look, it's important that I also want to leave a legacy behind where if I die, the world might say, or some people might say, we just lost a good man. That's all I want. I come from the Middle East. Why is it that this region has been the region of perpetual conflict when it has three of the monotheistic religions, all children of Abraham? They should be looking together, working together, eating together, sleeping together, and loving together. Why is it that this has been a major source of conflict? You don't see this in Asia. You don't see this. You see pockets like Kashmir, but you don't see this in Latin America. You didn't see this in Africa, but you see it here. And why? So this is my goal, is to understand what is it that can make the 24 states of the MENA region completely become stable, prosperous, happy, healthy, and live for their children and grandchildren an environment where they love to be growing up. Okay, this is my dream. Okay, and in this dream you have to understand that there are religious issues, there are cultural issues, but then there are issues of what I call political interference from outside. Whenever a state allows itself to be used as a football ground where teams can come and play football on this pitch without a referee, this becomes a failing state, a fragile state, and finally a failed state. If you look at the United States foreign policy, General Wesley Clark, former head of NATO, at one time he said that it was the vision of the United States to, in essence, create discontent, revolution, disruption, and state fragility in 7 of the Middle Eastern states: Somalia, Sudan, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and one other I can't remember. Syria. Okay. Look, this is a vision that was 25 years old, and whoever is behind this vision and the execution of this vision has largely succeeded, because we've seen Somalia disrupted, Libya disrupted, Sudan disrupted, Syria disrupted, um, Iraq disrupted, Afghanistan disrupted. The one country left
Iran.
now is
Yeah,
Iran. This is why there is so much focus on Iran to also make it a failing state. But the Iranians have been a little smarter in not allowing foreigners to come and play football on their ground so far.
In this case, Mohammed, do you think this is a solution? So to make a peace under the Abrahamic Accords? Do you mean this accord, which was?
No, the Abrahamic Accords is a good thing, but it can only really work if and only if there is recognition of the rights of the Palestinians. If this is not achieved, then the accords are meaningless in many respects, because the whole basis of the accords is the name Abraham. He's a prophet of the Jews, the prophet of the Christians, and the prophet of the Muslims. So in a way, the idea is superb, that all these monotheistic children of Abraham have to find a way to unite, live together side by side. But what happens to the Palestinian people? What happens to their quest for statehood? What happens to their displaced lands? If this is not resolved, how is it ever possible for an Abrahamic Accord to be just more than a writing with a few signatures on it?
Exactly, I agree with you. I think without solving this problem, like any problem in the world wouldn't be saved. Because if like this war continues, another war, why the another war cannot be continued? Sure. If one side insists for Israel, for example, that it has rights for self-defense, of course it has a right for self-defense.
Of course.
It has right for existence.
Yes.
But in the same way, Palestinian state and Palestinian people have right to exist. And if it will not be solved, that always another conflicts will appear, will happen in another parts of the world, because any leader will think, if Israel allowed to do that, if Israel is allowed to build these settlements illegal by the way, by UN resolutions, and if Israel has right to for self-defense, why Russia cannot do that in Ukraine, for example, or why China cannot do to Taiwan? Sure. So the all disputed territories can become the territory of war.
There is no moral basis to say that Russia should not be doing what they're doing in Ukraine and Israel can continue doing what they're doing in Gaza. There is no justification for that double standard, absolutely at all. If you want to be able to solve problems, you need to apply the same values, the same standards. Otherwise, you live in a world where might is right, and you live in a world where nobody can ask any questions or question any answers.
This was a question I wanted to ask you about about your opinion about the Russian-Ukrainian war, because we just before I had a conversation with Her Excellency Alexander Dove. His opinion is different. So that's why I was wondering about your views on this conflict. Please, can you share?
So,
can you share,
look,
please?
It's a very difficult situation, and I feel really, really sorry for the people of Ukraine. Really sorry. I also feel very sorry for the people of Russia who have lost their kids, grandkids in a conflict. This is a conflict between two people who are both Slavic in origin, who are neighbors. As President Putin once said very earlier on, that to destroy Kiev is not possible because Kiev is the mother of the Russian Orthodox Church. Very, very powerful statement, okay? So in a way, you have to ask yourself what precipitated this conflict before you can talk about the conflict. What precipitated this conflict, in my view, is when the Western powers suddenly started to entice Ukraine to say, you should join NATO, you should join the EU. It's like somebody saying to the Channel Islands, which are between England and France, the Chinese saying to them, oh, we will give you a lot of money. Can we please put our military missiles here to target the United Kingdom? How do you think the United Kingdom would react? We already know what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis, okay? So in a way, I personally feel that Zelensky, whatever his thinking was short-sighted. If he had been much smarter and had had a background in diplomacy, in politics, rather than the circus, he might have said, why did none of my predecessors ever embark on this adventure? Why were they were all wise people. They'd been through a lot. If they didn't, maybe I should read into this. Maybe I should investigate this, analyze this far deeper. And he would have come to the conclusion that the Finland model was the best model. He should have adopted the Finland model, which is we are neither East nor West. We are independent and we will rely on some aspects of our economy for the East, because Russia is our neighbor, it's the largest country in our sphere of influence. And of course, we love some of what the West does, but we want to be free people. We don't want to be beholden to any organization. We don't want to be um, part of any institution which is a military institution or an economic institution where we have to exclude others. Had he just said to Lavrov when they met in Geneva before the invasion began that, look, in my lifetime or in my political career, which is 4 years, 8 years, whatever it is, I don't foresee that we will be members of either NATO or the EU. But I cannot bind future presidents. They may decide to do what they want to do. This answer would have solved everything. In the end, what will now happen? Will he be able to join EU? No. Will he be able to join NATO? No. Has he lost 15% or 20% of his territory? Yes. Have his people suffered? Have more than 5 million migrated to Europe? Something that they could not do before the invasion. Now Europe says, open borders, just come, stay in Bulgaria, stay in Romania, stay in Moldova, wherever you want to go.
Poland,
It's Poland,
Canada.
wherever. It's free. So who do you believe who wanted to go and tried their hardest to leave Ukraine are now having the possibility to live overseas, are going to come back to Ukraine? So what has Zelensky actually achieved? Tell me. What? And I was at another event, the Tehran Dialogue Forum. They made me sit on a panel for Eurasia. And they said to me, or there were people from Azerbaijan, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan on the panel. And the moderator asked the question as to how do the stans see themselves? And they asked me to talk first. I don't know why. I'm not from the region, but they thought maybe let's have a non-Stani person speaking first. And I said all these countries are going to look very carefully of how the Russia-Ukraine war finally ends. If Ukraine had won the war, each of these countries would have felt the confidence to be able to do what they want to do. In the case of Armenia and Georgia joined the EU, in other cases, other situations. But if Ukraine is going to lose this war, which I believe it will, then the freedom of maneuver for the other stans is very, very limited. So they will need to navigate very carefully between Russia, China, to some degree Turkey, and the Western powers, all of whom will come on their ground to play football.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I would say that Kazakhstan's position and policy, I think it's quite similar to Finland.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
And Azerbaijan as well. They are happy to work with Russia, as they did during this conflict with Armenia. They're also happy to work with Turkey. They're happy to work with Israel. And they are a major oil exporter. BP has one of the biggest operations there. So look at Aliyev.
Maybe this is a model for the future world, for the future international
Yes.
Relations. So what do you think about BRICS? What's the plans for BRICS? What's the perspective for BRICS and what
So BRICS
goals
is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It's a great acronym, but there has to be far more than just acronym. There has to be a lot of underpinning, cultural underpinning, moral underpinning, political underpinning, military underpinning, financial underpinning. All this has to be there. The reason why NATO succeeds, the reason why EU succeeds is because there is a huge degree of alignment in thinking. I wouldn't say it's 100% aligned, but it's between 70 to 80% aligned in their vision of themselves, their vision of their neighbors, their vision of other powers and all this.
in future?
In the future. What is it today that unites the BRICS? What is it? Tell me. Other than maybe their, I wouldn't say hatred because that's too strong a word, maybe their dislike for some of the policies that have been adopted by the international community. By that I mean the Western system. But beyond their dislike for this, what else is there that unites them?
Maybe the wish to be sovereign independent and solve their problems by themselves?
It's a good idea, but at the end of the day, as I said, you are moving from one might power to another might power. Belt and Road is China's way to conquer the world. Russia's way of conquering the world is military might. They're still a superpower, militarily speaking, nuclear power and all this. So it's a question of, are you going to exchange one superpower brother protector for another superpower brother protector? There is no such thing as being completely free. You cannot be completely free. Even Switzerland, that was so free, in the end had to become part of Schengen. Nobody can survive by themselves today. They need to be part of a order, a regional order of some sort where there is alignment. Geographically, NATO is very aligned. EU, of course, are all neighbors, so that bloc works. GCC works. BRICS is so disparate. So other than meeting once or twice or three times a year and hitting the West with a stick, what else are they going to do?
Maybe they going to implement some alternative financial system.
So they already tried with the Asian Development Bank and something else, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, whatever it's called. But at the end of the day, will they actually replace the IMF, replace the World Bank as institutions? This requires a colossal amount of money. The only country that has got the money in this system is China, surplus cash to give. Russia hasn't got money. India has money, but it has a very big population that they need to make sure that they can look after first. So where is the money going to come from for this at the end of the day? Who is a rich country that can throw cash at this system?
But what about this new payment system? Not new, but
Crypto.
this
Crypto could work.
Crypto, yes.
Or a new currency that becomes a reserve currency. But to become a reserve currency like the yuan or renminbi is trying for so long, it has to be adapted by the international community. If they start to sell oil, for example, in yuan or price it in renminbi, this improves their stature and their ability. But other than this, what is there? Crypto could be an interesting, if they focus on this and have a central bank with these 5-6 countries growing to bigger numbers, and then have a central bank that is going to look at blockchain and crypto as a way for fair distribution of finance, yes. But for this, again, there has to be leadership that can articulate this, align it, and then execute it. I don't see this here today.
But we already do, our countries. Now we can do the payments between our countries and national currency.
Yes.
So,
No, this is definitely a start, but to what extent is the Kazakh tenge or the renminbi freely available to non-Kazakhs or non-Russians or non-Chinese to be able to buy their debt, invest in them, and of course the risk is huge. You look at the ups and downs of the Russian market, how many people made money, but also how many people lost money. Until it is the Western capital markets, financial markets, stock markets that dictate the rules for the world, it's going to be very, very difficult for foreign investors to have confidence in the marketplace, because there are restrictions of what you can own, restrictions of liquidity when you want to sell. Suddenly they could impose exchange controls. This is why the US is the biggest issuer of bonds, debt for the world. This is why the UK, the European Union, because end of the day that overnight your investment will not be seized, will not be, completely, how do you say, when the currency devalues so that it's worth 5 or 10% of its face value. You don't see this. This is why people put their spare cash, because they are confident that their cash will be preserved. The same level of confidence does not exist so far in some of these BRICS markets, where the local currency can fluctuate 10-20%. Look at Iran, which I'm familiar with. Just in the last 6 weeks, ever since the dialogue with the United States started, do you know how much the Iranian currency appreciated? 30%. In 6 weeks, we talked about why there is little confidence in investors investing in the debt markets or the equity markets in the BRICS countries because they are worried about currency devaluation, they're worried about overnight freeze, they're worried about expropriation, they're worried about so many different things. So because these risks are there, the appetite for the international community to invest here is reduced. Everybody will have exposure to these markets, but it will be very, very limited as part of their diversification strategy. If you had $100, you would say, okay, let's put 5 or 10 here because maybe you'll see some growth, but 80, 90, you want to put it somewhere where you're not going to lose it.
In this case, can we say that idea of BRICS is unachievable?
So again, I think that it is more achievable today than might have been maybe 10 years before, because 10 years before we were living in a very comfortable, stable, unipolar world where one superpower ran everything.
Decide everything.
Decided everything.
For
And
others.
largely people were fine with it. The dollar was the only real currency. The euro was catching up. The Swiss franc is a safe haven. The pound nobody cared for anymore. Today, because of the way the US has conducted itself, there is an opportunity for a alternate to rise. But this will require bold leadership, dedicated focus and thinking of how to create multilateral institutions that can survive and expand. And today I don't see this. It's possible, but I don't see it happening. I don't see China saying, fine, we want to step up to the plate and become a global power, a global leader. By default they are, but it's not by choice. Until they start to have the confidence of doing things by choice rather than by default, the alternate will not work. Russia is not capable of leading. India is not capable of leading. South Africa certainly not.
So in this case, what's the alternative for BRICS?
So I think that the alternative for BRICS, if I was their advisor, I would say China has to step up to the plate. China has to conceive of a multilateral institution order which has their own central bank, that has their own development bank, that has their own sources of funding, and most importantly, either Bitcoin, crypto, or some currency that can be used for bilateral global trade. This requires China to start to feel confident of flexing its muscles in a global way. It's not there today. It's not there yet, but it has the potential to come there. So today, as I said earlier, and I'll repeat myself a little bit only, BRICS is an antidote to the West. BRICS is not a structure that is a forward-looking structure. It is a structure to fight the West as opposed to an independent structure that can evolve and become a powerful alternate. Until they go out of the mindset of saying, this is not about the West anymore. First, this is over and done with. They can do what they like. We have a vision to become an alternate power, an alternate system. BRI was very interesting because China invested in BRI maybe $1 trillion, and its return on investment in this was far greater than the $3 trillion that the United States invested in conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq alone. The return on investment for China was far superior.
You said already that all empires has like
Shelf life.
Yes,
150 years.
Yes, under 150 years. Yeah. So we all know how Great Britain was great. Yes. So what's your vision about this country for current situation, global situation?
So I feel sorry for the British. It's a wonderful country, wonderful people. The welcome they gave me and my family when we came there, everything, the opportunities they gave us, everything was really, really good. But in the last 10 years, they seem to be making decisions where they're scoring own goals. They're shooting themselves in the foot. Their management of COVID-19 was a disaster. Their Brexit strategy was completely, it was unpredictable. It was completely not thought of in any form or shape. And they just went ahead and they did this without knowing exactly what the repercussions of that are going to be. They didn't have a plan B because nobody, they thought this was just a referendum that would never pass, and that's it. And suddenly it happened. And if they want to, and I think they will in the next 10 years, find a way to come back to Europe. But it will be a very, very different Europe. Now, their only salvation would have been if the US had embraced them, just as US wants to make Canada the whatever 49th state or whatever it is, maybe they could make the United Kingdom the 50th state, okay? Because alone it cannot survive. It has to be part of a regional grouping, either Europe or some sort of relationship with the United States. Okay, the Five Eye setup is just intelligence only. It's not a coalition or conglomeration of states. So it has to find its way. And the other way would it have been for it to be a Singapore on Thames, as they call it, okay, where we are a services company, we are open. Everybody can invest here. We are a bridge between North America and Russia. We are a bridge between North America and China. We are a bridge because we have a commonwealth of 52 member states whose GDP is higher than that of EU. Let's see how we can exploit the commonwealth and become the champion of the commonwealth. They need something to project themselves. And again, because of poor leadership, they haven't found it. In fact, the last thing they did was to throw all the rich people away. I don't know if you follow this. So that we used to have a system of non-domiciles. 16 years later, you become domicile. Until 16 years later, as long as you are only spending capital in the country, you pay no tax. This attracted so much money, created so many jobs, and this April they decided to scrap all this. And so every 10, nearly 1 million people from London, millionaires, have left. Yes, nearly 1 million people have left the country to go to Europe, Dubai, elsewhere, okay? And who has replaced them? Illegal migrants.
Yeah, it's
So
pity.
this is policy
It's
making,
pity.
which
It's
is
really
a
great country
disaster,
and great people,
okay?
like you said. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
How much
And
soft power the United Kingdom had, how much it has fought for human rights everywhere, how much it has supported countries. Its foreign aid program was the best in the world. BBC World Service was what everybody listened to for their news. Today, they have no money. They're shutting their embassies. The BBC is very polarized. Nobody listens to it anymore. So how could you so quickly lose all of this after 150 years of being a small little island up there and controlling the world?
exactly. And what are your vision about future of Europe, European country, European Union?
I think 2 or 3 points to make there. The powerhouse that was the EU was Germany. Germany financed everyone. It financed all of Central Europe when they became members of the EU. It has helped so much. Today, Germany has lost its way. It's lost its economy, it's lost its manufacturing capabilities, and it's lost its political framework where German chancellors were able to lead Europe. Today, Germany is out. France has its own internal problems. So who leads Europe today? Largely it is the newcomers like Poland, Hungary, Italy. Do they have the vision for a Europe that is united, prosperous, happy, and stable? No. So even during the time when the UK was a member, to get alignment between 28 member states was difficult, but it worked. Today, to get unanimity on anything is almost impossible. The only thing they were united on is UK wants to leave, let's get them out on our terms, not the UK terms. On this, they were united. That's the only thing they were united. So,
And also their wish to help to Ukraine
well, no,
and to fight
no,
Russia.
because there Hungary is not in favor of many of the approaches, resolutions. Italy is on the margins as well. So you don't have a unified position on this. That's why it has not worked. That's why it has not worked. And do you honestly believe, I don't believe that Russia for 1 second, knowing how difficult it has been to swallow Ukraine, would have any designs to go and swallow Poland next? No chance. So this is paranoia. It is just knee-jerk paranoia, okay? Worst case for Europe is that they might make a beeline for the Baltic states. Yes, and then of course NATO will have to wake up and say, does Article 5 apply or is it only on paper? This is the only thing that Russia could do once it gets out of Ukraine, if it wants to. But why would it want to? For Russia, it's much better that the Baltic states stay in the EU so that they can have their businesses, open branches there, suck money from the EU banking system and use it. And I will tell you, when the Ukraine war ends, my gut feeling tells me that Putin might just allow Ukraine to be a member of the EU, but never NATO.
Of course, it was
EU
from the
is
beginning they
because
stated.
it will suck money from Germany, France, Poland, everywhere there, and then the Russians will come, set up businesses, and use this money for themselves.
Can you tell your vision on our countries, on Central Asian countries?
So I love the people. I love their long legacy, their long history. So God has blessed them with Silk Road, beautiful climate, beautiful geographical landscape, lovely people.
A lot of mineral resources.
Yeah, the natural resources, hugely wealthy, okay? But because they are crushed between two superpowers in the north and the south, they need to understand how to navigate this road. And they were part of the Soviet Union. It hasn't given them time. It hasn't been enough time for them to have gotten out of the Soviet Union and developed their own system. So give it time.
I'm hopeful too, of course, because everybody wants to see their country prosperous, independent, sovereign,
Happy,
stable.
prosperous.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. So, Mohammed, thank you so much for our conversation, and thank you for the invitation to this really very great event and interesting, because China is our neighbor, as you
Sure.
said, yes. And I hope we can do the same conference in Kazakhstan.
So that's why I was happy when I was invited to the Astana forum, and I'm hoping that you'll be there, and I'm hoping that we can meet with 3 or 4 people and discuss how to make this happen. This is the only reason why I'm happy to go to Astana, is to find people with whom we can then do what we are doing here, there. This is my dream.
Hopefully, it will become true.